Trends may come and go, but natural, well, it never goes out of style. Hi, I'm Alan Smith and welcome to the show. Today, we're exploring ways to reconnect to nature, going back to what's native, if you will. What do I mean by that? Well, let me show you. We're going to look at incorporating native plants into your garden as well as your dinner. We'll visit a local folk center dedicated to preserving regional heritage. And we'll learn about one organization's effort to empower urban locals with farming education and self-sufficiency. So are you ready to get native? Well, I am. But before we go there, I just want to point out one thing. You know, there's some plants and foods that have been with us so long in America, they go so far back that we think they're native. Like some of our favorite flowers. Daffodils, for instance, came from Europe. Queen Anne's lace came from Europe. You like honey? Honeybees came from Europe. And take, for instance, the beautiful flowers on these collard greens, brought over here by European settlers, but they're so much a part of our culture today, we just think they're native. Now let's get on to really going native. Our first stop is the Ozark Folk Center, dedicated to preserving the culture and heritage of the Ozark Mountain people with a lively, hands-on approach. You know, one of the things I find so interesting about north central Arkansas is that it's an area that really has worked hard to preserve the past, particularly in the crafts that were made in this part of the world. The Ozark Folk Center is a place where you can come and see so many of these crafts in one area, whether it's blacksmithing, basket making, pottery, well, you name it. But you know, for me, what this does is it underscores a sense of independence and self-reliance. And there are a lot of lessons we can learn from this place today.
Our artisans are here because we're perpetuating the Ozark culture and the crafts of this area. This gives them a chance to show our visitor exactly how things were going on in the past, but also the living culture that we have today. We have over 20 different artisans here at the Ozark Folk Center.
20?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, the sound of the banjo was an important source of entertainment among settlers in this part of the world. And even today, the music that comes from these hills is very much in the hearts and minds of its people here in North Arkansas. Mountain View is the center of the Ozark folk music scene. It's not uncommon on any given night to hear fiddles, guitars, mandolins, and other acoustic instruments ringing through the hilltops of this region. Well, there's really something here for everyone, isn't there?
People from all over the world have come here and they can immediately identify with multiple levels of the craftsmanship that is occurring, and they take a little bit back with them.
Coming up, a traditional fall dish that's sure to become a new family favorite. And later, we're visiting the urban gardens of Heifer International. You don't want to miss this. Are you a fan of the butternut squash? Well, I certainly am. I love them cooked in so many ways, but I want to give you an idea of making a pie with one. I know it's a little out there, but if you love pumpkin pie and you love sweet potato pie, this is a great sort of in-between. To get started, what you want is just an average size butternut squash. You're going to prick it with a knife about every 2 or 3 inches around it, and then you're going to just place it in an oven at 350 degrees for about an hour until the squash is soft all the way through. Bring it out of the oven and let it cool. All right, so it's nice and cool. well, it's a little warmish, but that's all right. We're gonna go ahead and jump into this. And the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the squash and I'm gonna open it up. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? Why don't we just go ahead and just take it off of the aluminum foil here. And the next thing I wanna do is just take a spoon and I'm gonna scoop out the seeds like this. And then I'm gonna do the same on this side. There we go. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna peel off the skin. You wanna just take your knife, cut it off like this, because what you really need is 2 cups of the flesh. So I'm gonna take a cup here, and it's gonna be mashed squash. So roughly what we're looking for is those two full cups. So there's 1 packed cup. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this into the food processor, cup 1, and then we'll do the same. So you can see that this squash, medium-sized squash, will produce about 2 cups of flesh. And there's the 2nd cup going into the food processor. And that's just a matter of adding the other ingredients in the food processor. And the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take 12 ounces of evaporated milk, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, half a teaspoon of apple pie spice, half a teaspoon of nutmeg, and just a little over a teaspoon of cinnamon. Okay, so there we go with that. Next, we're gonna add a couple of eggs. 2 medium-sized eggs, and then 3/4 cup of granulated white sugar. Now it's just a matter of mixing all of this together. So you want to blend all this together until it's a nice consistency, about 45 seconds to a minute. It's looking pretty good in there, don't you think? And then it's just a matter of lifting this off. And then you've got, well, liquid pie. We're going to add it into the pie shell. Now it's just a matter of popping it into the oven for about 45 minutes to an hour. Just check on it from time to time. You can stick a toothpick in the center. You want to make sure it comes out clean, or a fork or a knife. And you're going to bake it at 350 degrees, and it is so delicious. If you grew some butternut squash yourself, you get extra points. The next time you go through the produce department, don't just walk by those butternut squash. Pick up a few and try this recipe. It's a great fall dessert and perfect for Thanksgiving. Really good. After the break, Heifer International gives us a tour of their urban farm in downtown Little Rock. Now, since we're on this native kick, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out 2 of my favorite natives that are edibles in this garden. One is the blackberry, so good, and then over here, the blueberry, both North American natives that you can grow in your own backyard. Heifer International is best known for the work they do to help end hunger and poverty around the world. One of their new projects focuses on developing sustainable food production in urban areas.
We wanted to create basically a heifer urban farm, something that we could have in the city, something we can actually show some practices that we're doing in Arkansas and things that we're going to be doing with our Heifer USA program. We wanted to actually be able to produce stuff to giving back to the community, and we wanted to help out some of the hunger relief programs in Arkansas.
I think there's a great synergy in what's going on with urban farming or local food movements that we're seeing all over the United States. And I think there is a great way that dovetails into the work that we do, because our work all over the world, it is local farming at its, at its core.
These are some sweet potatoes our gardeners and farmers picked today. We're looking at about 80 to 100 pounds that we'll actually pick today.
I believe that our nation has suffered from something called an artisan gap, which basically means that our society has not doing something that it learned how to do long ago. So we have forgotten how to grow food for ourselves. We no longer grow food at our homes. We go to the grocery store and buy things, and that's not sustainable.
It's a food sustaining activity or a project that everybody can easily do, and then that can help actually end hunger and poverty, which is our main mission at Heifer.
This is part of the urban farm setting that we put in place. We actually added some goats and a couple pigs. We have some sheep coming next week and some alpacas. I believe it's important to have this in this urban environment so that we can actually show what you can grow in your own backyard, what you can grow in an urban setting, be able to see the animals and kind of get a feel for what we use those for in the field. Really trying to help educate people on gardening and what you can do on your own to become self-sustaining. I think the missing connection we have right now is today's youth and getting used to understanding where the produce comes from and where the animals are grown and what they produce from that, where our nuggets come from or where our fresh produce is, and to understand that that stuff can be grown in your own backyard, and these are things that you can do and learn the nutritional level of those and the benefits of having those vegetables and produce available to you.
Next, a native plant that's sure to be a real star in your garden. Stay tuned. Baptisia, or better known as false indigo, is one of my favorite perennial native plants to incorporate into my garden designs because of its gorgeous spring flowers. So, because of my enthusiasm for this plant, I met up with a friend who's done some amazing improvements to this North American original. Hans, this has to be one of my favorite Native American perennials, but you've done so much to improve them.
We love Baptisias. We've been working on these for about 18 years.
18 years.
Most gardeners are familiar with the blue,
right?
The false blue indigo.
Right.
There are other species. We've been working with hybridizing them.
Now, the wonderful thing about Baptisias is that they're like a peony. They will last for a long time in the garden.
Correct. Planted in a proper site, it will probably outlast the gardener's use of the garden. Yeah. They have an incredibly deep taproot when they're established. They're drought tolerant.
Well, in a world of limited resources, we're all looking for plants that require less water. And these will grow in a wide range of the country, won't they?
Correct. The genus is native from Texas all the way to the Canadian border.
And just look at the color variation in this one. What do you call this one?
This is one of our favorites. This is Cherry's Jubilee. It has a nice cherry chocolate color, initially in bud, and then opens to this warmer shade.
Kind of a deep mahogany. One of the things I love about Baptisia is that it blooms about the same time peonies bloom in the garden, so it's a nice complement.
Correct. It's nice vertical texture compared to the peonies.
Yeah, yeah. And I think so many of us long for things that we can't grow, and you know, I love lupins. I see them growing in Maine and up in Canada and Nova Scotia, but I can't grow them in Arkansas in the South. But this is a beautiful alternative.
Correct. The Baptisia have great heat and humidity tolerance, and like we mentioned before, they're so long-lived.
Yeah, the longevity.
Compared to the short lifespan of a lupine.
What an exciting breeding program, and what a journey you've been on.
It's been an incredible journey.
Yeah, keep up the great work.
Thanks.
Coming up, a local chocolatier shows us the ropes when it comes to making one of the most popular edibles in the world. You love chocolate? I do. I have a little place I keep it. It's so good. You know, it comes from the cacao tree, and a lot of people don't really know how it's made. It comes from Mesoamerica, and it's been used for a variety of reasons for thousands of years. The process of making chocolate is fascinating. So why don't we go to my friends at Kyya Chocolate and let them show you how it's made.
About 4.5 years ago, we were working at an orphanage in Uganda, Central Africa. We have 4 adopted daughters, so orphan care and anything with orphans is important to us. And so we were working in one of the slums, and I just broke down one day, and I decided that we needed to do something. So we decided that we'd start a chocolate company. So this is a cacao pod. This is where the beans grow in. They grow in a tree. It takes about 4 to 5 months from a flower bud to a finished pod. And in this particular pod, there's about 20 beans. Once these are ready, they'll crack these open with a machete. And what they're looking for is these. These are cacao beans. Each bean weighs, like I said, about 1 gram, and so it takes about 450 to create a pound of chocolate. We take a portion of our profits and we pour it back into the places that we source chocolate from around the world. At this point, we've sourced chocolate from about 12 countries. That direct sourcing, so relationships and trips, we've done 4 of those, and the goal is to do a couple per year. It takes a lot of energy, a lot of time out of the shop to go and build relationships with cacao farmers. And so we try to get 3 of those a year. So we're gonna sort through here, make sure we don't have anything that could hurt our machines. There's a piece of plastic in there that needs to come out. So we're kind of doing a manual inspection. This is from northern Uganda. We'll weigh out a 20-pound batch, and then this is gonna, once we've weighed it, we'll move over and we'll start to roast. Roasting, again, is what helps us bring out the flavors. It kind of, if you think about it, it kind of elevates all the flavors so we get the best flavor we can possibly get from the bean. There is a ton of diversity in chocolate. So chocolate grows from 3 different plants. Each one has a little unique flavor depending on where its origin's from. And you can pick up 85 distinct flavors in cacao depending on where you're sourcing chocolate from. This tub is actually made of a granite base about 4 inches thick. The 2 granite rollers basically grind and shear the cocoa nib, and that turns into chocolate. We do that for about 24 hours to get it really refined where your tongue can't detect that there's any solids left, and then we'll add our sugars and our other ingredients to make the finished chocolate. On an average batch of chocolate, these wheels travel 84 miles. So this is a pretty long, slow process, but it's one of the reasons why chocolate tastes really good. We've got a mission that's very different than most people. So kind of back to the beginning of the story, we were working in an orphanage in the middle of Central Africa. It's near and dear to my heart. And so, you know, we don't want to just make money. We want to make a difference with what we do. And so while the chocolate's important, it's even more important for us to give back and to pay it forward. And so every time someone buys a Kyya chocolate bar, they're involved in that process of making a difference, not just in our community here is supporting Kyya, but also supporting our farmers and those communities that we're sourcing from.
Want to learn more? Visit pallansmith.com for delicious recipes, garden tips, blog posts, and our online store. Well, that's all the time we have for today's show. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. It's always fun for me to learn new things about the plants that are around us and how we can incorporate them into our lives, particularly when they're natives. Until next time, I'm Alan Smith.